Some would say we saved the best for last. Those who went in front may see different. But I do know that we've got a great speaker to finish off the morning. And our final speaker this morning is none other than our very own Brigadier General Bob Marion, the Army Program Executive Officer for Aviation. Bob.
Well, good morning, everybody. Appreciate the opportunity to say a few words and be the final speaker for Quad A. I didn't realize that was the case, but I promise I won't go over my allotted time. But what I did want to do was take a little bit different tack this year than I've taken in the last 2 years. This is my third time doing this address at Quad A, and in the previous 2 times I've done this, I've talked about what we were going to do in the context of how our branch chief has laid out the requirements for all of us in the enterprise, and also in the context of what funding was available to us. So that's what I talked about, what we were going to do. And so as I was thinking about what to do this time, I reflected back on the 2 years I've been in this job, and it really is remarkable what everybody in this room, by working together, has accomplished for our Army. So what I wanted to do, I told the team, I said, go out and I want pictures of the stuff that we've actually done in the last 2 years that are going to enable us to get to the finish line on the things and on the big ideas that General Perkins talked about when he was up here. He talked about presenting multiple dilemmas through multiple domains and locations while preserving the freedom of maneuver so our commanders have multiple options. And so I think by working together from the requirements perspective, inside the building, from the Headquarters Department of the Army staff, from our key stakeholders in the Special Operations Aviation at Fort Bragg and Fort Eustis, with AMCOM and all of Team Redstone, and most importantly, all of the industry members that are actually delivering the capability that the Army is resourcing and defining as requirements, ultimately delivering those capabilities to soldiers. So that's what I wanted to do for this my third time, is to talk to you about what we did in these last 2 years and tell you where I think we're going in the next 5 years. And I think you'll see it really is amazing. Take a look at where we are today. If you walked out on a flight line today, what you would see, and then look at where we're going to be in just 5 years if we execute all of the plans for modernization inside this branch that have been resourced, defined as requirements, validated as requirements, put into acquisition programs, and are starting to execute now. So the key things to look at when I get to one of these charts, eventually I promise I'll get to one of these charts, the key things to look at are milestone Bs, milestone Cs, initial operational tests. Because when we get to those big events, and especially initial operational tests, that means we're spending procurement dollars and we're getting ready to deliver something to soldiers. So you'll see in the next 5 years, we've got a lot to do. I mean, we've accomplished so much inside of this entire enterprise. We should be very, very proud of what we've accomplished. But I'm telling you, we've got a ton of work to do in the next 5 years. And so I'm going to continue to work with each of you and request your help and support and commitment and leadership in getting us there. So go ahead and go to the next chart. So I just wanted to call out 2 things. Some of the faces have changed on these charts, essentially the same formation. New Deputy PEO, Ross Guckert. Many of you knew Rusty Weger. He retired, and so Ross has shown up. He came to us from our headquarters, ASALT in the Pentagon, and he's stepped right in and done a fantastic job. Great to have Ross on board. And the other thing I'll call out to you is the PM for the Improved Turbine Engine Program, ITEP, and Future Vertical Lift, Rich Kretschmar. So Rich is on board now. We've actually got that position validated, and we'll have a colonel show up and centrally selected to do that job starting in FY17. But Rich has done a fantastic job standing up that office, working specifically with Colonel Ramsey Bentley down at Fort Rucker as the TICM, and those two are doing great jobs, and we're going to move forward and get to a material development decision in the first quarter of FY17. So go ahead and go to the next chart. So this is the chart that I drew on the back of a hotel napkin, and then we turned it into really a depiction of what we've done in the last 2 years and what we have to do in the future. And if you remember, you've heard me speak before, people ask me, like, what's the most important thing? And then the thought is I'll say future vertical lift or ITEP or whatever. And the bottom line really for me is getting to the finish line. If you put a triangle on a chart, you got to get to the triangle, because there's so many parts of the enterprise that are relying on you getting there. From formations to training, to soldiers going through training at Fort Eustis and Fort Rucker, to funding that's been laid in 7 years before then to do this development so we can get to an operational test, start spending procurement dollars in field and get to an initial operational capability. There's so many things relying on all of the enterprise achieving the milestones that we set out and lay in early on in the program. They're so important as the program progresses, that really the most important thing is when we make a commitment and we put something on the chart, we've got to get there. And we've done a really, really great job of doing that in the last couple of years. And I'm going to walk through each one of these swim lanes here in a second. But the first thing I'll say is, if you recall, we had a chart very similar to this that I've used the last 2 times, and it's the G8 FDV chart that had its origins from when Comanche was canceled. And when Comanche was canceled, we had all these platforms that were on the left-hand side of the chart, and how we were going to continue to modernize our force to support the Army when we fenced those dollars to stay inside the branch, to make sure that we continued to be able to support ground commanders, like Doug said, is our number one mission. So I remember taking this job and thinking, if you look back to that decision, and I always say I remember that decision because that decision was made, or at least publicly announced, on my birthday when I was inside the Comanche Project office. And I see some folks out here that were also inside the Comanche Project office at that same time and remember that time. And we were all concerned that we were making the right decision on behalf of the United States Army. And the senior leaders who made that decision and the senior leaders who executed the outcomes that resulted from that decision, when you look back now over the last 10 to 15 years, you'd have to say that we did the right thing. Those decisions were the right decisions. If you look at what our combat formations have done in multiple theaters under multiple demands, it's been really incredible what our soldiers have been able to accomplish because of some decisions that were made and that we've executed. And I remember thinking we were kind of at that nexus point again as we were approaching the Aviation Restructuring Initiative. And at the time, we didn't even know that we were going to be going through a National Commission for the Future of the Army, and then a holistic aviation review. So all the things that were going to be changing inside of our branch just in the next 2 years were really going to set the foundation for the requirement, again, to make really, really good decisions at the senior levels in this branch to take us through the next decade or decade and a half. And so now we're delivering against those decisions today. And we've made some great strides in the last 2 years, but again, we've got a lot ahead of us. If you look at all the triangles that are in the last 2 years on this chart, you'll see we've accomplished a lot, but we have a lot to go. If you look at the very first swim lane up there, AH-64 V4s. So those are in full rate production. We're continuing to deliver those aircraft today, and then you'll see out in FY17, the Army has, and the Secretary of the Army and the SecDef have authorized us to begin the process to achieve a multi-year starting in FY17. And that's a big deal given the resource constraints that we're in to be able to achieve a multi-year in Apache. We've had multi-years in Black Hawk, and if you look at the very next one, you'll see we're in multi-year 8 right now, going to multi-year 9 also in FY17. And by the way, all the Boeing folks, don't get worried. It's not a 2-year multi-year. I'll get to that in a second. Just stay with me. On CH-47F, we're continuing to deliver against a multi-year now, and you'll see we're going to have full rate production decisions after Lot 15, and we'll continue with delivering Chinooks, and I'll get to that in a second when I talk about Block 2. But Gray Eagle. So we've continued to execute our full rate production contracts in Gray Eagle. We've incorporated the improved Gray Eagle ECP. We have a follow-on test and evaluation for the IGE, and then we're going to start delivering improved Gray Eagles starting in the end of FY18. So that's a big, big improvement over our current capabilities. So go down to Shadow V2s. We've been delivering version 1 Shadows through second quarter of FY15, and we transitioned over to the V2 system. Tactical Common Data Link, encryption, much improved range. We know we still have a lot of work to do in the UAS arena. We've talked about the requirement to be runway independent, and our branch chief has made it clear what our guidance is. We're moving out on a future family of UAS systems. Requirements documentation coming, and we'll move out in that area, starting some S&T work already there. So a lot going on in that area as well. So that's the near-term piece of what we're doing. So remember, every time we deliver an AH-64E, we take an older D out of the formation. When we deliver an F model Chinook, we're taking a D model out of the formation. We're divesting our A's as we field our M's in the Black Hawk formation. So we're modernizing our formations in the near term when we go to things like IGE and V2 Shadows also. To the midterm, we're going to continue to modernize our Apache, and the version 6 capability gets us to our fully CPD compliant Apache. So when we signed up to a requirement as an Army that was done and validated by the Aviation Center of Excellence and TRADOC and the Army G3, it was for the version 6 Apache. And we fielded 2 versions of that aircraft, but this is the aircraft that gets us to that full CPD compliance. And we're going to get there. We have a lot of, you'll see a lot of flight tests, getting ultimately to a follow-on test and evaluation in FY18. And the last 3 years of that initial multi-year for AH-64E are going to deliver that version 6 fully CPD compliant Apache. And we'll continue into full rate production because that won't buy out our total acquisition objective for Apaches. For UH-60Vs, this is a big deal for the United States Army. This is a great capability that we would not have been able to deliver to our Army had we not worked cooperatively with AMCOM, with the Headquarters Department of the Army and the G3 and the G8 from a resourcing perspective, and the G4 from a resourcing perspective from the SSPEG. So the last 760 Blackhawks that we were going to field to the Army, that were going to remain in the acquisition objective of 2,135 Blackhawks, were not going to be digitized. They were not going to be bust aircraft because we couldn't afford it. So we worked together with AMCOM, and we've come up with a plan where we'll recap the airplanes using SSPEG dollars, and we're going to develop a cockpit that goes into the aircraft. So when the aircraft gets put back together at CCAD, rather than putting the old cockpit back in it, we're going to put a digitized cockpit back in it. And then we're going to deliver those last 760 aircraft as UH-60Vs. Again, this is something that we would not have been able to do had we stayed in our, a lot of times when times get tough and, we go back to our cylinders of excellence, and we spend less time coordinating across the enterprise, and we can't afford to do that. And again, delivering against this capability would not have been possible had we not done this in conjunction with AMCOM. So my big thanks to General Richardson during his time as the AMCOM CG, and General Gabram, who's jumped right in and has been a great partner already in these first couple of months. So the big deal with UH-60V is we're going to have our initial flight, first flight, in January of 17. So that is right around the corner. I'll be watching that, and I'll tell you, I've been real proud of the team on what they've been able to accomplish so far. Chinook Block 2. So we had a requirements validation portion back in 14. We went off and did an analysis of alternatives. We presented. We were going to a milestone decision, an MDD, a material development decision with OSD, and they looked at the plan and said, we think you guys know what you're doing. You guys go ahead and take care of this. So that was delegated to the Army. So now we're moving out on Block 2. You can see we've done a PDR. We're going to get to a milestone B, and then award an engineering and manufacturing development contract to do Block 2 Chinook. And that's really going to set the foundation. It's going to set the foundation for that platform for the next 50 years. It's critical for us to be able to address some obsolescence issues. It's critical for us to be able to achieve additional commonality where it makes sense with our SOA partners. So we're looking at putting a new nose on the airplane. We're going to put a new tail end on the aircraft. We're going to expand the envelope to 54,000 pounds. We're going to improve the fuel system, the electrical system. There's a lot of improvements that we're going to do on the CH-47F. But probably the key thing is we're going to set the conditions for an improved engine at some point. If we can get the resources and it makes sense from a requirements perspective inside the portfolio, we're going to set the conditions for putting a new engine in the Chinook and carrying it out to 2060. So this is a huge win for our Army aviation formations as we continue to support the Army. And by the way, all the little blue star clusters there means I have a follow-on chart where I'm going to talk briefly about each one of those things. And again, I'll just touch briefly on those. DVE bores, you've heard that talked about a lot. That's so when I came here, when I took this job, our plan in a resource-constrained environment, this is 2 years ago, we were going to continue to modernize flight controls. We were going to continue to modernize symbology across our modernized aircraft, and that's how we were going to get after the DVE challenge. There was the third leg that we always talk about, and that's the integration of sensors into those other two legs of the stool. But given our current funding situation, it was unaffordable to try to do that in the near term. So we were going to do that when we got to FVL in the long term. And there's other doctrinal things we can do. There's other training things we can do. That was the plan. That was the Army's plan to get after that. And within the last 2 years, we've said, we probably need to relook that. And so there's been additional emphasis on that requirement. There's been great support inside the headquarters department of the Army to fund this capability. And so now we have a path forward. We have a milestone B schedule, a milestone C schedule. We have a full rate production all inside the next 5 years. So a lot of work to get done, and we've partnered with a lot of folks all across, not just the Army, but the other services to make sure we're synchronized and going to deliver this capability as soon as we possibly can. And I have another chart on that. I'll get to it. ITEP, you've heard ITEP discussed several times already also. This is a big deal. This is a big deal for our Army, and it's a big deal for the platforms. This capability is going to be resident in about 85% of the platforms that we have. All of our 60Vs, all of our 60Ms, and all of our Apaches. So of our tactical aircraft. So we're going after a milestone A this quarter. We're looking to award 2 contracts, down select to 2 vendors. It's a 2-year technology maturation risk reduction phase where we're going to get to PDR inside that time frame. And part of that solicitation is to deliver your EMD proposal. So we're ready to go right away into EMD. So this is a big deal for us. And I have another chart on that. And the last thing on here is joint multi-role technical demonstration as it relates to future vertical lift. So the JMRTD, it's going to be a big deal as it's delivering 2 flying demonstrators and some component level technology development that if it matures, we could use it to significantly inform the requirements for FVL, because we might be able to expand some of the capabilities that we may not get to when we're doing an air vehicle demonstration. And again, I have another chart on that, but the key is air vehicle demonstrations, component level demonstrations, and what we don't want to forget is the mission systems demonstration. And the key there being, we talk about enabling, and you hear the analogy a lot of time to as General Munt held up his iPhone and talked about downloading apps. The truth is, Joe Pisano told me his grandchild actually downloaded that app for him. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, but so that's the key thing we talk about in getting to. We talk about interoperability, we talk about face compliance, but really the idea is opening up the aperture for cockpit development so that we have the ability to incorporate not just hardware, but more importantly, software development capabilities onto the platforms outside of the traditional way we've done it, right? So that's the mission systems architecture demo. And those things, component level, air vehicle level, mission systems architectural level, feeding into the MSA phase for FEL to help define the requirement. And in the end, we're going for a material development decision this fall. First quarter FY17, and then we kick off the analysis of alternatives to move forward. So a lot going on, a lot of things happened in the last 2 years to get us where we are. But look at that chart and look at all those diamonds and triangles in the next 5 years, and think about, as I said earlier, what a ramp looks like today and what a ramp can look like in 5 years if we do our jobs and do them well. Right? We're talking about V6 Apaches, UH-60Vs, all having FOT&Es in the next 5 years. We talk about, a Block 2 Chinook that's going to have a Milestone C. We talk about a Milestone B and a Milestone C for DVE bores. So there's going to be a significant amount of capability in the near term and in the midterm that we're going to deliver to our Army. Next chart. So 60V, again, I'm going to talk briefly on each one of these charts, but the big deal again here is digitizing the remaining Blackhawks that we would otherwise have been unable to do. So again, big cooperative effort between the equipping peg and the sustaining peg to deliver this capability. So the sustaining peg is going to fund the recap, and it's going to be conducted at CCAD. We're going to develop the cockpits. We're going to put them in so that when we deliver it, from a pilot vehicle interface standpoint, there will be minimal training between someone who knows how to fly a UH-60M and someone who knows how to fly, or someone who's going to now fly a UH-60V. And the idea here also is that it's not just minimal training in the airplane, is that our training devices are going to operate the same way from a pilot's perspective. So as I said earlier, first flight, first quarter FY17, January, and I told the guys, I want pictures, right? So you see prototypes 1, 2, and 3 are in the PIF, in our prototype integration facility. They're there today. So we are moving out on this, and this is going to be a great win for our Army. Next chart. So degraded visual environment. So you heard me talk earlier about delivering this capability as soon as we possibly can. For a lot of reasons, and I think you know them all. This has been a degraded visual environment. Challenges have been a major driver in many accidents, and we've lost lives and we've lost platforms because of this. And so delivering the capability as soon as possible with integrated sensing, while also taking advantage of modernized flight controls and our symbology, is going to be critical. So if you look at the DVE bores requirement, it's not the full requirement that we're going to eventually go to. So if you look at it, you'll see it's takeoff, landing, limited hover, ground taxi. It's pilotage, but it's in those limited capabilities. It's forward-looking only, and the degraded visual environment that we're going after is DVE. But if you go to the full capability, which is what our branch chief has talked about, it's what all of you know, and where all of you understand where we need to go. It's not just pilotage in those limited flight regimes, it's in all regimes. Formation flights, it's about forward-looking and 360 hazard warning. It's about networking situational awareness. And the key thing, again, is not just relying on symbology and flight controls, it's providing synthetic vision to the crew. And the last thing, and probably the most important, is not just dealing with this in one single DVE condition. It's, we have a lot of scientific analysis that goes into how many conditions there are and what the gradient of sand is, and we've decided that there's actually 11 DVE conditions. The bottom line is whether it's snow, visible moisture, through fog or rain, or all the varying grades of sand, we've got to provide a capability that covers all those conditions for our aviators and our Army. So that's what we're getting after. Next chart. The CH-47 Block 2 program, I've talked a little bit about it already. Again, we're going to a Milestone B next in second quarter of FY17 with an EMD contract award. And again, I said I wanted pictures of the stuff that we've actually done to bring this capability to the Army. So you can see the improved drivetrain going in. And again, that's to accept a larger motor in the future. A big part of this capability is going to be a new blade. We've essentially been flying the same blade for 50 years. The lightweight fuel system, those of you who've flown Chinooks know the fuel system has grown over time, and that's great because there's a lot more capability now with more fuel. But we have 6 bladders and multiple pumps and switches, and we're going to go to singular bladders that are going to provide us with a greater capability. It takes a lot of the pumping and a lot of the mechanical attributes out of the system, so we're going to be able to reduce some weight. The two big things. Going after obsolescence in the near term and the recap piece are going to allow us, when we do that and take a look at the rear section and the nose section of the aircraft, allow us to get to an appropriate level of commonality with the SOA fleet too. So that's going to be a big advantage to us when we're able to more efficiently manage a production line and a supply chain, because the last piece is going to 54,000 pounds. And that's something that the 47G went to that we did not go to in the 47F. That's what we're, and again, that's what we're doing in Chinook Block 2. Next chart. So ITEP. So I've talked a lot about ITEP. I think I'll just leave it on this one at our intent is to get to a Milestone A this quarter, and then award 2 contracts, down select. They're in source selection today, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about it, but they're in source selection today. We're going to down select to 2 vendors, and we're going to deliver this capability. We're going to get to a PDR with EMD proposals, and then go straight into EMD to deliver this capability. And again, as I said earlier, going to our 60 and 64 fleets, but you'll see their potential to FVL, and that's when you look at the CapeSat 1 and on the smaller end of CapeSat 2 and smaller end of CapeSat 3, there's some real possibility to use, if not the motor, the technologies that are developed as we go to a next generation turbine engine. By the time we get ready to do FVL, there's some real possibilities there. Next chart. I think this is my last chart. So again, a big part of a lot of people confuse these 2 programs, 2 separate programs, the JMRTD and all of its associated technology developments at the air vehicle level, the mission systems level, and the component level being managed by Bill Lewis and Dan Bailey and the AMRDEC, and absolutely tied in with Rich Kretschmar, as you can see, feeding over into the Future Vertical Lift Program of Record, and again, going after a material development decision this fall to start off and do an analysis of alternatives to see what is in the art of the possible in delivering capabilities today for the Army to meet these requirements that through evolutionary changes to our current platforms we just won't be able to get to. And again, some pictures of some things that are actually happening, from wind tunnel testing to the developments of fuselage and mating of wings, and some other things as well. I think that's my last chart. Next chart. So let me just that's my next chart, I guess. So let me just summarize by saying I'm really proud of what our organizations have accomplished in the last 2 years. And when I thought about what I wanted to talk about, I wanted to reflect on the great accomplishments throughout the enterprise that have enabled us to get to this point, from ARI to the National Commission for the Future of the Army, to a holistic aviation review, to changes in funding, to focuses on other types of modernization from a materiel perspective. And remember, my focus is really on the materiel piece of it. I think we've accomplished and we've stayed focused in the areas where our branch chief and the enterprise has led us. And I think we've done so much in the last 2 years that if we can continue to accomplish those same things in the next 5 years, it really is amazing to think of how different our ramps could look in the next 5 years. But to get there, we got a lot of work to do. And that means continued support every year. You know, we always say you have the year of execution, which you're in. You have the budget year, which is the next year. And you have the 5 years of the POM. So 7 years is basically spoken for, but every year you got to balance a checkbook. So every year we have to continue to execute, because if we don't, every year our ability to execute this plan, we put in jeopardy. So I would just ask you in my last 10 seconds, if you're part of a triangle on that chart, please get to the finish line. Get to the finish line, because we're going to deliver these capabilities, and in 5 years, those ramps are going to look different because of what you did. So thank you very much. I appreciate the time. And one last thing. So I'll be on the floor later this afternoon with the PMs. That's usually a question and answer section for 30 to 45 minutes, an hour, something like that. So if you have any questions, please come to that event and fire away. So thanks very much. I appreciate it.